Hello. In the lesson number 7, we're gonna deal with list blocks. And before we move actually onto the dealing with whatever options we have under this drawer, let's just quickly just observe that the designer space is preset as usual. We have our button that we're going to use as event handler, and by clicking this button we're going to execute commands that we set. And again, as usual, this text label is going to use we're going to use it to display results of our processing in the code. Note that we still use this text display even though we have a list. We've seen this before, and for the time being we're still going to use it, that we can do that. The only difference is that list is going to be displayed within the brackets, and all the items are going to be separated by a comma within this bracket if it's a list. So I will demonstrate this in a moment. Um, in principle, list is a natural extension of a text, because it's really nothing else but stacked number of separate statements, where each of these statements is text or a long sequence of strings. So first thing we want to do, we want to create a list, show how to do that. So that we can use it in our event handler, we need to create this list as a variable. And then we also know then if we want this variable to be available for any event handler, it needs to be generated as the global variable. We learned that already. We can change a name to whatever we want. Let's just call it a list. So this is our variable name. And let's see how we can form a list. So the first option is to create an empty list. You can create an empty list in case that you don't want it pre-populated, but you want to change your list within the code itself. For us today, we do want to create a list. We want to pre-populate it. And here's this option that looks like the settings button. All the blocks that have this settings button are called mutators, because by clicking here you can change this block, its look and its function. So see here we have an option to add items to the list. So as soon as we add the first one here, see we change this empty list to make a list, because we already have this one item, and we can add as many as we want. And let's say we want 3 of them. Okay, so now we need to populate these 3 items within the list. And let's say we want to make an address book of your friends, right? So we want to put your friend's name, nickname, phone number, and email address, and whatever else you can add, doesn't really matter. So we're gonna make this information in form of a text, and we're gonna need this text constants that we're gonna populate. We need 3 of them. So just copy, and let's see how we can do this. We can say first item is name, second item is nickname, third item is phone number, and so on. But very fast you realize this is very impractical, because you have to keep repeating this for as many friends that you have. So instead you would rather want to keep all the information about a single friend within one item of your list. And when you do that, you want to think about how you can extract all these different pieces of information in an easy way later on when you need them. So we need to remember what we did with text. When we dealt with text, there is an option to simply subdivide, split text into as many pieces as many particular characters are within this long string of characters. So as long as we use a particular character as a divider between different items, we can easily split it later on. So let's say in the first item we have our friend's name, Alan, and then we separate, this is first item, semicolon, and then the second one is going to be his nickname, so let's say his nickname is the answer, and then separate, that's divider. Next item is the phone number. I'm just going to type in something very random, hoping this is not a real number of anybody. And then we subdivide that one, and the last item is going to be his email address. So his email address is going to be the answer at mail.com. Okay, and so on. If you want to add more, it doesn't matter. Just follow the same procedure. So we can do this for the second friend, third friend, and so on. We can keep adding, but today it doesn't matter. We just want to demonstrate things. So let's say the second item is just going to be some number. We want to demonstrate something, and then the third item is going to be a word. So let's say the word is goat. So note we use the number, but we entered it as a text. So let's see what happens here as we display this list. So to display it, we go to our event handler, right, when the button is clicked. What do we want to do? We want to display this list in this label. So we're going to set the label text, right? So we select here, set the label text to what? To our global list. So we remember that we need to do is hover over the name, and we need to get this global list so that we can display it, right? So right now, as we click our button here, it's going to display our list. So notice the first item is, so first of all, it's bracketed, right? The list is bracketed. This is the first item. Then there's a comma, second item, comma, and the third item that we have in the list. As we enter this number as a text, this number has the quotation marks as the rest of the text that are in these items, right? But we can do something else. If we know, okay, this is a number, we can enter it as a number. So this list allows us to mix text and numbers. So let's say we use 180 as a number, we don't need to enter this as a text. So now when we execute this, click this button, you see what happens. 180 is not a text anymore. There are no quotations around it. So this is now recognized as a number, and we can mix in the list both text and numbers. Okay, so this is the first step. Let's see what else we can do. What are the other options with lists, how we can manipulate with them? So we created this make a list by mutating create empty list. Then you'll see that many of these options are very similar to the ones, if you remember, when we dealt with texts. We can add item to a list. We can check is something in the list. So if particular item is in this list, and the response to this is going to be a logic response, so we're going to get either true or false, right? We can check the length of a list, which essentially is going to have how many items are in the list. So if we do it for this one, it's going to tell us that the result is 3. We have 3 items in this list. Is list empty? We connect this list. Of course, it's not empty, right? So the answer is going to be false. We can pick a random item from the list. So most of these are very self-explanatory. Index list, so we can set whatever we want to find within the list, and it will give us its index, meaning what is the point in this list from 1 to 3 of a particular item, or how many you have. You can select a particular item from the list by stating its index. So this would be 1, 2, 3, and it will pick, one of those. We can insert item into the list at a particular index. We can replace it, right, and so on. We can remove it. So all of these are very self-explanatory. So we don't need to really demonstrate them, and most of them we did demonstrate for the texts. And they're very similar. Most of these, uh, because simply the list is really an extension, natural extension of the text. So one thing I want to show here is, for instance, how we can uh, have this list and extract, say, a phone number of our friend Alan. So how would we do that? So instead of just get here, right, what we want to do, we want to pick first item in our list, right? So what we're going to need to do here, we're going to go to list and we're going to find here, select item, right, from the list. So we're going to go here, select item from our list. So this is our list. And the index of our item is going to be 1 because that's where our friend Alan is, right? So we're going to do this and we're going to pick this at item 1. So let's check this step. We click on the button, execute this, and now we have only this first item, right? But this first item is still pretty complex. We have all these characters stacked together and we want just to get this phone number. But we remember, now that we deal with this text, we can easily split this text uh, by simply splitting it at this dividing character that we used. So we now need to go to text and we want to split our text at this particular character. So we're gonna now, this is our output text, and we want to now split that text, which is right here, right, at what character? I'm just gonna copy this, and our character that we want to split is a semicolon. Okay, so let's see what's the result now. We execute this. And you see, we converted now this single line of text, which is this here, into a list. Because now we have a list with all these separate elements, a name, nickname, phone number, and the email address. So what do we want to do now? We just need to pick the phone number. So we need to pick the third item in our new list, right? So we're gonna use this select again. We don't need these two. Actually, we're gonna need the index. And after it is split here, we're gonna say we want to select item from this newly created list, and we know that the phone number is at the index number 3, right? So now that we execute this button, we're gonna get finally our phone number, and this is our task that we wanted to achieve. Instead of doing this and selecting our own divider, or this special character between the items, there's a procedure that's already one of the procedures that can be used, and this is CSV, which means comma separated values. So we can manipulate our text items and create a comma separated text or comma separated lists, and we can switch both from list to text and vice versa by using this comma separated command that is, or blocks that are already pre-built for us. So we don't need to invent our own separators as we did here. We can use those ones, or we can use our own if we prefer those. It really doesn't matter. The last thing I want to say, if you think, well, this was really cheating because I knew that our friend Alan is at the spot number 1. It's the item number 1 in the list, and it was easy for me to find his phone number, because I already knew that I'm supposed to pick this first item here. What if I don't know where is Alan in this list, right? Then it would be a little bit more complicated. The reason why we didn't do this right now is because we don't know all the tools that we would need to achieve that goal. So once we cover the controls blocks right here, then we would be able to come back here and execute this problem that would be a little bit more realistic. What we would encounter is that we don't know where our friend is in the list, so we need to search first for him, and then once we find at which item our friend is listed, then to pick his phone number the way that we did here. So there's a build up to a more complex problem that we would be able to deal later on. But this is all for the lesson number 7, and the next step would be lesson number 8. Until then, bye.